Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with lesson number 8 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn how to do 3D graphics and 3D animations in Python. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice strong cup of black coffee. That is straight up black coffee, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. That's your go juice. Go get you some. I am also going to need you to fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code. And as you're doing that, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, think about looking in the description down below. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what we are going to do today. And what we're going to do is look at the solution to the homework assignment, which I gave you in lesson number 7. And that was to create two animations, like two thermometer animations that are both going at the same time, but the second one going twice as fast as the first one. And not like this and then like this, but them both running at the same time. Leave a comment down below how many of you were successful and how many of you folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know how many of you guys were able to figure this out. Even better, if you guys are able to do a screen capture, take a screen capture of your animation, upload it to YouTube, and then leave a link down in the comments down below so we can kind of see if anybody came up with a good solution, and then maybe a few comments about how you got it done, because it's always exciting to see what other people are doing. I'm going like this because it's actually 3 degrees inside. I mean, it's 3 degrees outside. We're in the midst of a polar vortex here in West Texas, and inside my room it's about 40 degrees. Well, you might say, you idiot, put a coat on. No, this orange shirt is my trademark, and so I will not cover it up with a coat, even though I might freeze. But I might be wiping my nose a little bit more than normal, and I might be clearing my throat a little bit more than normal because it is absolutely freezing in this room. Okay, but I digress. Let me get out of your way and let's see if I can jump in here and show you my solution to these two animations. Now, probably it turned out to be a little bit harder than you were thinking, and we get back to this concept of blocking, that if I have a for loop running this thermometer, then this thermometer over here is still, and if I try to run both thermometers inside of one for loop, then that is not going to work. That is not going to work very well either. And the reason that is not going to work very well either is because one of them wants to run at a different speed than the other one. So I will jump in and kind of show you, you've got to think in terms of non-blocking. And for that, really, I don't think a for loop is the right solution. But let's come over here, and we are working in the most excellent Vpython folder. I will create another one, call it dual animations in .py. The .py is pretty important, and boom, we have a fresh new Python program just waiting to be written. So let's jump in. I think for the sake of demonstration here on the thermometers, I'm not going to put the glass bulbs and the mercury balls and all that. I will just have cylinder 1 and cylinder 2. And so I will call it I better import my libraries, and so I am going to, from Vpython, import star. And then I don't think right now that I will be using NumPy on this one. I will create my cylinder 1 and my cylinder 2. So I will say my cylinder, I don't like 1 and 2. I will call it, let's see, my cylinder I will call it my cylinder orange, and I will call the second one my cylinder cyan. So I'll have two different ones, and this is going to be equal to a cylinder, and then I will need a radius. Radius is equal to 1. And then I will need a color is equal to color dot orange. And then I will need a length and make it 6. All right. So I've got a radius, I've got a color, and I've got a length. That's pretty good. Now I'll come down to this one, and this one is going to be cylinder. Radius is equal to 1. Length is equal to 6. And color is equal to color dot cyan. I think it should know those. Now this one I better give a position to because I don't want it on top of the other one. So I better put it offset a little bit. So I'm going to put a position is equal to vector. And I think I'll just move it up. And so I'll move it up to like 2, and then 0, 0, and this should make 2 cylinders. And I'm going to need to do a while loop, while true, and then just pass. I just want to see if I've got 2 cylinders. All right, so let's run this thing. Ooh, that moved it the wrong way. I was not thinking. That is not good. I see exactly what it was. I don't want to move it in X. It's like X comma Y comma Z. I want to move it up. And looking at that, I think that I should also move it up by about 3. And so that should give me 1 cylinder on top of another. Let's kill it and let's give it a try. Okay, 2 cylinders. They are both round, and that looks really good. Now, what do I want? I want the top one to be moving twice as fast as the bottom one. And again, your first intuition was probably to have 2 different for loops, and you probably had a for loop and a for loop, and then you realized it was going like this. Okay, and that was not what the assignment was. Then you put a for loop inside of a for loop, and this one's going like this, and this one's not moving. And so what I hope that you see is, that you can't do it with a for loop. So we're going to do it with a while loop. But if we're going to do it with a while loop, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set some parameters up, and it's going to start looking a lot more like that animated ball bouncing in a box, because we're going to have to set up certain things. Well, one thing is we're going to have my cylinder orange length. Okay, and let's set that equal to 6. And then my cylinder orange, my cylinder cyan length is equal to 6. Now, why am I setting up variables? Because I'm going to be changing the lengths down in the for loop. So each one of these needs to have its own length. And I think maybe I'll start it at 1. Both of these at 1. Okay. Now, what I'm also going to need is I'm going to need an increment of how much each one of these changes every time through the loop. Well, I want the cyan one and the orange one to both have their own increment. So I'm going to say my cylinder orange delta, how much difference in length, what is the increment in length each time through the loop? Well, I'm going to say 0.1. Now my cylinder cyan, what is its increment going to be? It's going to be going twice as fast, so I want it to be twice as big. And I should say that more clearly. It's this increment that sets how fast it's going to be moving. So if I want my cylinder cyan to be moving twice as fast, the delta needs to be twice as big. So this is going to be 0.2. All right, so I've got a length and I've got a delta, and I've got them created. And so inside the loop, what we are going to do is we are going to increment those two things. So I'm going to say my cylinder, and I'm going to start using these autocompletes. Orange length is equal to my cylinder orange length, okay, plus my cylinder orange delta. Okay, I'm going to have to scoot out of your way more. My cylinder orange delta. So next time, how big is it going to be? Well, it was my old length, my cylinder orange length is equal to my cylinder orange length plus the delta. All right. And now what you can imagine is, I think I could probably do this quicker by snagging this, copying it, putting it here and pasting it. And then here the orange becomes cyan. And then I'm going to copy cyan. And then I will change orange to cyan. Okay, so every time through, I'm making it a little bit bigger, but because my cylinder cyan delta is twice as big, that one's going to be growing twice as fast. But one of the things we are going to have to, okay, and then let's just apply those. So now my cylinder orange is dot length is equal to my cylinder orange dot length. Okay, so let's make sure that we understand this. My cylinder orange is the object up here. That is the object. What parameter do I want to change? I want to change this parameter length. So my cylinder orange is the object and dot length is the parameter that I'm going to change, and then I set it to the variable I created, my cylinder orange length. And then each time through the loop, that is going to be getting bigger. Well, similarly, I need to apply that length to cyan. And so I will change my oranges here to cyan. Cyan, like that. Okay, so now every time through the loop, both of them are getting bigger, but what is happening? They're both getting bigger, but the cyan one is getting bigger twice as fast because each time it's going to jump more. But now with this, they're just off to the races. They're getting longer and longer and longer. I need to make sure that they turn around and go the other way. Well, when do you want them to go the other way? Well, if they equal to or greater than their total length, which is 6, or if they're less than or equal to their minimum length, which let's just say their minimum length is 0.1. All right? So we need to put some if statements in. If my cylinder orange length is equal to, is greater than or equal to what? 6. Or my cylinder orange length if it's what? Less than or equal to 0.1. So I've either gotten as big as I want to get and I want to turn around and go back, or I've gotten as small as I want to get and I want to turn around and start getting bigger. So it's bouncing off of those two edges. What do I want to do in those cases? Don't forget your colon. What I will want to do is I will want to make my cylinder orange delta equal to my cylinder orange delta times minus 1, right? So if it's positive and getting bigger and hits the edge, I make the delta the opposite, and then it will get smaller until it hits here, and then it will get bigger. So I'm switching the delta from positive to negative. So it's getting bigger, 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 hits the edge, then gets smaller, 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 hits the edge, bigger, 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 bigger. Does that make sense? The delta is going from positive to negative, and then that means it will be getting, if it's about to get too big, it'll start getting smaller. If it's about to get too small, it'll start getting bigger. And then I think these should be the same, I do believe, for the cyan. So I'll just copy those, come over here, paste them. That didn't quite paste right with the indentation. I'll get that like that. And now I need to change this to cyan. 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 All right, so let's see. This at least should be a good shot at starting it. So every time it gets bigger, then we make the application, but if we've gotten too big, then we turn around and turn it back the other way. So let's try this. This is absolute insanity. This is insanity. Okay, so let's look here. One thing is we didn't put a rate, so we need to put a rate in there to slow it down. So I'll put a rate of 5. But man, there was something not right. So I have my cyan length, my cyan length. One of those looked like it might have been working, so let's come up and let's take a look at it now that we're running it slower. Cyan, 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 orange, orange, orange. All right, let's take a look at this. Running slower, maybe something will look reasonable. Kill it and run it. This actually looks kind of interesting. It seemed like the first time it worked, but then the cyan is going negative. And so that cyan did not see that it had gotten too small and kept getting small. So let's see what we're doing wrong. You see the orange is working. The cyan is going faster. But it doesn't bounce off the lower side. The cyan doesn't bounce off the lower side. So if my cyan length is greater than or equal to 6, that is working. Or my cyan length is less than or equal to 0.1. So it's this one that is not working. Let's take another look at this. Let's run it again. So they come up, and when it's greater than 6, both of them turn around. They are going up at different speeds, but it's at this lower one when it's less than or equal to. My cylinder. Okay, so it comes down and it just jumps right over it. You guys have any ideas? It's kind of strange behavior, isn't it? Okay, I think maybe what we need to do is we got to be a little bit more careful. Let's say, because I think this is already jumping negative. So let's make these increments smaller, because the problem is I think that at that boundary condition, I'm putting it at 0.1 and the step size 0.1. And so let's make the delta 0.01. Let's make the delta 0.02. I just want the deltas different than the endpoints. And now I'm going to make it go faster because I made those increments so small. So let's see what happens here, because now these are far away from the 0.1. So let's try this. Okay, so that is looking good so far. They're coming out smoothly. The blue turned around. Now, will the blue jailbreak, or will it bounce off that bottom one? All right, boom. Okay, I think it was just a quirky thing because I was going to 0.1 and I was comparing at 0.1, and it just doesn't work well for those to be the same thing. Look at that. Boom. Okay, so what do we learn? This gets back to that kind of blocking versus non-blocking thing. When you want to do something like this where you're independently working with two different things and animating them, you can't do them in for loops, where this one has a for loop and that one has a for loop. You have to have one while loop, and then you have to have parameters that will work together, that you increment those parameters within a while loop. Does that make sense? Guys, I hope I'm explaining why this is important. It is important to understand how to independently operate with two different animations, and the best thing is to do that with one while loop and then independently control the parameters of each one of the objects that you are trying to control. So we got that working. All right, I think what I will tell you is, if you were unable to do this on your own without watching my video, but you were able to do it after watching my video, what your homework now is to start with a blank program and write it on your own without watching me and without looking at your old program, because you do need to understand this so that you can do it by yourself. So do it by yourself and make sure that you don't just move on without understanding it well enough to doing it by yourself. And then I think next week, the lesson that we will work with, the next thing that we will do, which will be lesson number 9, we're going to start going in and understanding colors a little bit better, because right now in our program, we're just using the kind of canned colors of like cyan, magenta, yellow, red, green, and blue, and there's just a few other colors that it will do. But what if you want the full spectrum of colors? How do you really handle colors in Vpython? And that's what we'll do next week. Okay, guys, I hope you're enjoying this. This was probably a little bit more tricky to figure out on your own, but hopefully you understand it now that you've seen me do it. And you guys, if you like this lesson, be sure to give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. When you do, make sure that you ring the bell so that you'll get notifications when my future lessons are coming out. And then, also please share these videos, because we need many more people who know how to code and fewer people that just sit around and watch silly cat videos. Okay. All right, guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.